We, first of all, we ventured from East Eddy, south of Mount Adams, to Taklock Lake, which is just northwest of Mount Adams. I recall that being at least an hour's drive. So we went there on the 26th. I don't recall that there was any major activity on the 26th, at least not that we're aware of until today. But it was the night of the 27th when we had a clear sky, clear, starry night. We were able to do a sky watch by the side of the lake, by the lake shore. And it was just perfect, beautiful. The lake was almost a mirror, just gently rippling with a gentle breeze, as I recall, but it was reflecting perfectly like an image in a mirror, the whole of Mount Adams, as well as the orange light of Mars just off to the right in the sky. And it was only later on that the moon was starting to rise toward the left of Mount Adams from our point of view.
Well, question. But didn't you have things though before you even anybody saw that UFO or that strange? Well, anything you can't identify as a UFO. But I'm talking. Didn't you hear some weird things like wood slamming on trees? You know, the wood knocks and stuff like that. Wasn't that going on too?
That went on for at least 2 full hours straight. While we were at the shore of Taklock Lake doing our sky watch on the night of August 27th. So we were doing the sky watch, and it wasn't long after we set up that we started hearing noises in the woods. That was to my left. I was the closest person seated near the woods, about 15 feet away. The thick woods started. And yeah, it was stick break and tree knock sounds, which are typical of Sasquatch. And those woods to my left, there were no campers, no campsites that we were aware of. There shouldn't have been anybody out there. If there was, then they must have been a true master of the forest, because those woods really are dense in some places.
Now, question: did the knocks? Did they come from one area, or did it come from different areas? Like you'd hear a knock in one area, and all of a sudden you hear a knock in another area. I'm just kind of curious if it was all in one location or in multiple locations. There, Troy.
Yeah, the knocks were coming from one location. It did not sound like an animal coming toward us or moving away from us. It was definitely something staying in one location. I would estimate within about 50 feet or so of where we were. That's just my estimate based on the noises. But it sounded like it was in approximately the same location, like something was sitting stationary doing this, or at least somehow not making noises as they walk around. Some of the noises were quite loud too, like whole tree limbs or tops of trees breaking, and someone hitting a rock against a tree quite loudly. Not all of them, some of them were softer noises, but that's what we heard for over 2 hours that night.
Well, how far away from that knocking area? I know it's hard at night because, it could be 25 feet away or it could be, 1,000 yards away. But do you have any idea how close to the tree line it was from where you guys were at?
I would estimate within 75 feet from the tree line or less. Maybe 50 feet, maybe even less than that. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where, but I would estimate less than 75 feet away from us. Even that might be a generous estimate.
Now, do you get nervous when you were hearing those? Was that the first time you ever heard anything like that and going out any place? I mean, encountered something like that? You personally?
To be honest, it was the first time I've heard those noises myself. However, the night before, when we were talking as a group and with another camper that happened to stop by, we had some conversations about Sasquatch, and it had already been well established in our minds and conversations that that area, the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, is Sasquatch territory. It's known to be such. So it wasn't really a surprise, to be honest, that we were hearing that and that I was hearing that. It was a little bit nerve-wracking and exciting for the first time for me just to hear that, but it was not the first time that I've had scary things happen in the woods. That whole time, myself and others were sending messages telepathically or just thoughts projecting out saying that we were peaceful people.
So in other words, you kind of got a little bit nervous, anxious, a little bit scared maybe?
A little bit at first, but I calmed down. I know how to stay calm, especially in situations like that. And I just stayed calm and let it be. As long as they didn't hurt us, then that was fine. And we just let it be what it was, which many of us do believe it was indeed a Sasquatch.
Now, did anybody the coming morning go in that area and look for any broken branches or footprints or hair or anything like that to maybe, to back up that something like that creepy maybe was watching you guys?
Our team did not, as far as I understand. We all stayed near the campsite where we were located, up the hill. And honestly, I would think that might be difficult, or at least a little bit challenging, just because of the thickness of the woods. And we're not entirely sure where to look if we were to do such an investigation.
Okay. Now, was that the night the UFO was spotted, or was that a different night?
This was 2 nights after our major sighting at the East City Ranch. We did not sight any other major lights in the sky after moving to Taklak Lake. However, most of our activity, at least that we observed consciously, was Sasquatch, stick break, and tree knock sounds, and even a sighting that was later that night, the night of the Skywatch.
Now, the night, though, going back to the night of the encounter of that object, that flashlight at the group of people, or, whatever happened, didn't a lot of strange things happen, like with Michael and cars not wanting to start and all that weird stuff, a car becoming magnetized? Can you go into all that, for the listeners that weren't listening last time you were on?
Yeah, I can describe that. So the magnetic anomalies and the verified hour, at least 1 hour of missing time, there could have been more time that was unaccounted for. But we had verified missing time the night of August 27th to the 28th. And that was near Taklak Lake. And that was after we started hearing the Sasquatch noises during our Skywatch. After about 2.5 hours or so of doing the Skywatch in the cold at night, we decided to pack up and go back to our campsite, have a warm fire, talk, and debrief a bit. Later that night, there were 6 of us to start at the fire, as I recall, and 3 people eventually peeled off and went their own ways to their own camps. But for a while, it was myself, a lady named Sam, who's on the UFOI team, and a lady named Ray, who's also on the UFOI team. We were talking for at least a good 2 hours or so there. until nearly 3 a.m. We were having all kinds of conversations and telling stories. But at one point, Sam and I happened to look up from the campfire just enough to look pretty much directly in front of us at the woods near the adjacent campsite to us, which was unoccupied that night. And we both saw a flicker of motion, which we both believed to be a Sasquatch entity, and a family arrived the next day with camper trailers and vehicles. And based on one of the camper trailers that was there, Ray estimates that, or Sam and I saw that. Sam estimates that the being we saw was around 9 or 10 feet tall compared to the camper trailer that was parked at that campsite, estimating where we saw or where we think the being was. And behind there in the night sky was a bright moon, shining a lot of moonlight, bright moonlight through the trees, streaming beams of moonlight onto the forest floor. And the shadow of this being blocked out a good portion of one of those beams of moonlight, which is most of what I saw of it. Later, after we had gotten that first sighting, I just had been watching that area of the woods, and I'm fairly certain that I also saw something that was peeking out from behind the trees. I didn't get a good look at it, but I'm fairly certain that there was something there. And it was silent, too. It moved silently.
Did the eyes glow or anything like that, or anything strange that you can think of that you remember or anything? Any weird smells come your direction or anything?
We did not smell anything, at least nothing foul or distinct that we think would have been Sasquatch. The forest smelled just like the normal forest air that night. We did not see any eye shine. However, Sam, who was to my left, was adept with, or somewhat experienced with Sasquatch sightings and interactions. And she has described eye shine before. However, we did not see any. This being that we think it was, we think was over 50 feet away, maybe up to 75. We're not sure about the exact distance, but it was a little ways away, definitely keeping its distance, but still watching us.
Well, that's really still close. I mean, that is real close. I mean, if it decided to come after you guys are brave. It would have been only a matter of seconds.
I suppose so, although we weren't afraid because there have been pretty much no stories of Sasquatch hurting humans, except maybe one. I'm not entirely certain about that, but in general, Sasquatch are peaceful beings, and we did not have reason to believe that it would have harmed us in any way.
Well, I have to be honest with you, Troy, that's just a matter of opinion. And, the bad thing about, nobody has physically caught a Bigfoot. We don't even have any bones from a Bigfoot. We have no skulls. We have nothing, to, prove it. But I can honestly tell you in my encounter, up in the Canadian Rockies in 2002, it was not a friendly encounter. Now, maybe it's because we were out in an area where humans normally don't go. I mean, we were way out. I mean, the closest little convenience store from where we were at was like over 15 miles away. I mean, we were at a place during World War II. They used to intern the Japanese prisoners. So that tells you how far out we were. And the encounter we had, it was quite, different. They're not, at least the encounter I had, it wasn't friendly. But it did do a lot of screaming. Now, did you hear any any, like Ron Moorhead has all these sounds of, Bigfoot, supposedly